It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Greg White, and Kara Smith-Brown with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Greg, Kara, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey there. It is good to have, we've got our guests completely outnumbered here.
and surrounded, painted in the corner.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you know, better yet, it's a repeat guest, which we're always excited about. And for that matter, we continue our collaboration with the ever immensely talented Kara Smith-Brown. So we're excited about today's conversation. More to come on that in just a moment. But hey, real quick, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to check us out wherever you get your podcast from. Subscribe so you don't miss conversations just like this, where we're going to be talking with an industry leader when it comes to supply chain technology. So with no further ado, Kara and Greg, are y'all ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Let's waste no time. JP Wiggins, co-founder and corporate development with 3G TMS. JP, good morning. How you doing?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me back. I thought you'd have learned from the first time.
Well, we tried, but we're contractually obligated.
Yeah, I think it was that radio show in Atlanta for our SMC3 conference last time we were broadcasting together, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
A great group, SMC3, and enjoyed that conversation. And, you know, I think we've got a lot more in store with you today as we get to dive deeper into your story. I think we had a couple folks on that episode, but regardless, great to have you back. Really excited about this conversation we have. You've got a very intriguing story, but also some been there, done that perspective that our audience is going to benefit from. Okay, so with no further ado, before we get into your insights and industry best practices and thought leadership, let's start by providing our audience a chance to get to know you better, JP. So tell us where you're from and give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing.
Oh, great. So, you know, obviously I'm corporate dev here and one of the co-founders of 3G TMS. We started this company 7 years ago. Professionally, before that, was at a small company called SAP. Ran their transportation and travel and transportation industry business group, both from a global marketing perspective and then product perspective. So did the SAP route before that. And then prior to that, though, was another company that we did a startup, which was called Glog. Glog ended up becoming part of Oracle in 06, 07, which is now Oracle Transportation Management, which is the world's largest transportation management system that's in use. And then before that was a little company called Weseley Software. Weseley Software, we ended up selling, and it's now part of Blue Yonder. So, you know, a lot of the folks there. So I've kind of been around the supply chain transportation management industry. And hey, if you want to go back deeper than that, before I got in at Weseley Software, I was the traffic manager. I'm dating myself with that term, by the way, at a company called Service Merchandise. If you remember the old Service Merchandise back, the catalog retailer. And I was the guy that manages the inbound transportation from the vendors that shipped into their warehouse stores. So that's my professional career. Personally, I live in Ohio. You know, father, I got 3 boys. I got one graduated college just now. He just got a job offer from Goodyear. So he's an engineer, also a Marine, second lieutenant. And I got another one in college, pre-med, and I got a high schooler. Really into baseball. Got 2 of my boys umpire. I umpire with them. We're at the high school level, and you know, kind of do the Ohio Northeast baseball, loving sports kind of thing. So,
would you say you're a pretty good umpire, JP?
You know, I can do some things well. I can call the balls and strikes really well, and I know my rules better than most. You know, sometimes though you get that bang play, that first second. Did the ball get there or did the runner get there?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just don't know. So you basically say, who's the coach that was the biggest jerk? And you go against him.
How about the chest bump when the coach comes out? Are you?
No, it's high school. They come out at you. They're off the field then. They're not allowed to negotiate whatsoever. They can't charge you.
Oh, that's awesome.
They take a step towards you, just give them and then they're fined and they have to sit out 2 games. So, yeah, no, they don't come at you.
You're getting the
that
real
could
story
work
here.
at other levels, I feel.
That's
like.
right. But you're getting the real story here. I love what really makes that snap decision. I love that, JP.
Yeah.
Love the passion. And I imagine that's part of your kind of your give back to the community. So many great people work to allow our kids to play sports across all levels, grade school through high school. So appreciate what you do there.
Hey, they got a lot of umpires is a tough one. I also donate all my funds that I make from umpiring to the local food bank because, with COVID going on, I live in Akron Canton, Ohio. The Akron Canton Regional Food Bank receives that. And I think that's something everyone should do, some volunteer work. And, got to give a little back to the community too. So, hey, have fun with sports and put a little money towards a charity. So it all works out.
Love that.
Good for you, JP.
I love when we learn new things from repeat guests. So that's a great key takeaway today, JP. Okay, so Kara, let's continue prying into more of JP's secrets.
Yes, JP, you've been doing this a long time. Thank you for giving us the background all the way back to the very beginning. I was early at Echo Global Logistics, and we were in the building 600 West Chicago where the old Montgomery Ward was.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad tells stories about people in roller skates bringing up your orders to the front. So
Wonderful.
Very similar sort of background, I'm sure. But you've been doing this a long time. Can you tell us, where do you go to get your news? Sort of transportation specific, logistics specific? What are your sort of two biggest reads that you go to sort of every day?
I guess my two ones, even though now I'm more focused domestically, I still love Journal of Commerce. So every morning I hit JOC up. I kind of see there's a couple editors there that I always hit their articles, William Casey, and then the other one is Wall Street Journal. So those are the two subscription services that I go to. I'm also picking up on some trends for my kids. And my millennial kids, they read a lot of those quick news services, so you can get it off of a few of the streaming services, but they're like 45-second articles or 30-second articles. And I say, well, why do you do that? And they're like, well, it's quick news, and they don't have time to narrate. They don't have time to put their own spin on it. They're just dumping you facts at you. So, aside from, like the Instagram news feeds that you can get, you can actually dial some of those things in pretty good and try to avoid the political spin. But I'm one of those big believers. You got to go to multiple sources, to 2 or 3 different sources before, because everyone's spending their own narrative on you on this stuff too. Yep. So, but JOC and Mall Street is where I start every day. How's that?
JP, are your kids interested in sort of logistics and supply chain the way that you are? Have you instilled the love of trucks in your children?
One was going to follow me in the career, and he actually joined the business school at Ohio State, Fisher School of Business. They have a transportation logistics program there, and he did that for about a year, and then he went pre-med. So no.
Wow.
Pre-med. Okay.
Yeah, and then I got an engineer now. So, but no, I guess, supply chain's been a tough one. I don't know. We'll see what the third one does. So, but they're more engineering types and than logistics. So we'll see what happens. Good question.
Great questions, Kara. Fit right in. I'll tell you what, Greg, before we go dive back into his background, a couple of quick, I want to connect the dots a bit. Journal of Commerce, outstanding source. We've got Eric Johnson. By the time this publishes, he'll already appeared on a live stream. But gosh, so much great insights there from the world of shipping and containers, you name it, and more. And then secondly, JP, going to your point of the 30 to 45 minutes, just the facts, please, just the news. We had Emma Cosgrove on recently with Supply Chain Dive, and I love not only their approach to reporting, JP, but up at the top, they'll usually give you a couple bullet points of the gist of the story. And so at a glance, you don't get any spin, you get the facts and the data. And that's
bluff, we call it. Yeah.
Yep.
Bottom line up front, bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of the things my boy taught me, the Marines tell them, they want it, bluff it. Give me the bluff. Bottom line up front, then you go for the details. And he says, that's how stuff should be. Bottom line up front, bluff it. Bluff it out for me. Yeah.
Love it. All right, Greg, let's dive in a little deeper.
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about some of your key positions, and in your past prior to 3G TMS, but I'd love to dig into a couple of those because one you didn't mention is really interesting. A company called Descartes, and I imagine that was the acquirer of one of your previous companies, right?
Exactly. Yeah, good point. So, an abbreviated resume. I mean, I'm like an onion. You keep peeling it back. There's a lot of other
I'm
layers
going
in
back
there.
quite a
So,
ways here.
yeah, no, I actually worked for Descartes Systems twice, surprisingly, in my career.
Yeah.
Once before Glog and after Glog. So, yeah, I was there. One of the companies I worked for got acquired by Descartes Systems out of Toronto. So, I was a product manager on their last mile routing and scheduling system. The RoadNet system was what I primarily did, and then took over product management responsibilities for pretty much all their application business. When I went back to Descartes after Glog got sold to Oracle, I didn't go to Oracle. I ended up going to Descartes. I was general manager of their application side. There was two big divisions of Descartes. There was the application business, and then there was the network business. And so I was GM on the app side. So again, we had the local area scheduling. We had some light TMS. We had a lot of packages, especially around bakery. Was a couple big industries as we were getting going, and then we were merging that with our network business.
That's interesting. I worked with a company around 2000 called Same Day Solutions that was doing some work with Descartes. And what we were trying to do was facilitate same day delivery of e-commerce sales. And interesting how long it has been to do that. But we had this follow the sun technology. I don't know if you might have been familiar with that, but the thing that made, there's a couple of kind of throwbacks in your history that could be considered new now. And the other one is service merchandise, right? So we've heard a lot about stores that are effectively showrooms for buy online, pick up in store, or, buy online, or, to use as a showroom and then to shop in the store. But there's really only, let's say, one Western Flyer bicycle out front, right? Or Stingray out front for you to look at. And that is coming back in a big way.
And what's old is new again, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, Service Merchandise was a catalog retailer, but they had a series of 400 or 500 stores across North America. Each store was its own warehouse.
Right.
So you would walk into a Service Merchandise, and there would be one of each product on the shelf. Now, you wouldn't buy that specific product. You had a little piece of paper, and you wrote down the number of what you were buying, and you'd go and you'd see one of everything, and you'd write your numbers down, you'd check out, and then they'd send someone in the warehouse, and they'd go to the warehouse and actually fulfill your order. It would come down a conveyor belt. So, I mean, isn't that the precursor to the internet right there? Fulfillment. I mean,
Physical internet.
It
is for sure.
If they could have survived, they could have been these forward inventory locations that could have done same day delivery. Right then. I mean, it's basically the Amazon fulfillment model right there. You have a local warehouse that has your product. Of course, there wasn't no internet, but if there was an internet, all you would need is combine it with some type of Uber delivery, and then you have same-day delivery of product for a retail chain. I mean, it was just, unfortunately, they went out of business in the mid-'90s due to, some managerial issues, and it just didn't survive being a catalog retailer, but competing against Sears in the day. But
Right.
Isn't that it's a phenomenal concept that just, being able to have your warehouse so you were very efficient on your floor space. So your retail space was very minimal versus you were able to use your stores as a warehouse. So each store is its own warehouse, basically.
Yeah, I really loved it. I actually did buy a bicycle there and rode it around the store. and then it came out in a box on the conveyor. I just remember it was like Christmas.
Was that one of you mentioned two bikes earlier. Was that the brand of the bike?
Stingray was the one I actually bought at Service Merchandise. Yes, but
is that a motorcycle, or is that just
no? It was a bicycle. Yeah, okay. I think it was Schwinn. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah,
he's got it on his manifest right here.
Are you kidding me? He probably delivered it. But I think that is a point that I think it is really worthwhile. There are a couple of things that you can still learn from even retailers like that. For instance, they didn't do this ring fencing of their inventory. They didn't have store inventory and e-commerce inventory. It was all available to whoever came in. And that is one of the critical flaws. And in fact, I just saw an article the other day from Tom Enright with Gartner. Same deal.
Yeah. And we had local regional distribution centers as well as each store. So if you imagine in a geographic region, you might have 5 stores in a DC. And all that inventory was available to the end consumer. So if one store didn't have it, you actually could physically transfer inventory to the other store or pull it from a DC. Yeah, there was a time lag in actually getting it, but it's similar to how like an auto parts stores work nowadays.
Yeah.
Hey, you go to AutoZone and they don't have your part. Well, I'll get it here tomorrow from you. But see, Service Merchant was able to do all that. So, but it made you that, yeah.
Could you also deliver to the consumer? It seems like there were some larger products that.
Don't remember. It might have for some of them, but I think on the washer and dryer type of stuff, yeah, we got into a lot more in that in Descartes though. See, and that was the whole, you go to the store, you go to the Home Depot or the Lowe's or wherever or the Sears store, you buy that washer and dryer. It'd be great to be able to just talk to right then schedule your delivery, delivery right then on it and confirm the appointment. And back, in the early 2000s, that was a very hard thing to do, but we do it now secondary nature. I mean, I just bought a Peloton, for example, and, was able to, when I bought the Peloton, schedule the exact time and delivery. And there's a massive amount of work going in that final mile of taking that delivery from a Peloton and having them come into your house and set it up. So you got the whole white glove and it's all just combined in one system. So
Home Depot tried the white glove in the mid 2000s. They had the Home Depot Expo stores. Do you guys remember these?
Yeah.
And they tried to do the white glove home delivery of like the big monogram refrigerators. This is actually how I got my start, was helping the drivers figure out how they were going to build their loads in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, which is kind of crazy. But it also failed. they couldn't figure out how to get the big monogram refrigerators white glove into these homes in the northwest suburbs as fast as the next competitor could. So it also didn't work.
And imagine all that has to go into that conversation. So you need to understand what inventory you have available. So you're going to be matching a washer and a dryer. That's the easy part, and knowing where that inventory is coming from. But then you also need to manage the transportation of that from where that exists to your physical location. And then you need to tie that to the actual delivery folks themselves, the white glove people, the technicians that are able to come in and install it. And they need to make sure that their schedule is available. So marrying all this together, well, guess what? That's what you need a TMS for, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
So
if I could reminisce one more second.
Okay, yeah.
I'm very jealous here because y'all are bringing up memories of my own. I spent a little bit of time in retail, and for a company known as JP White. I'm not sure if JP White's still around or not, but I remember when we were out of items at our store in Aiken, South Carolina, we had a quick list of all the other stores in Georgia and South Carolina. And while the customer was there, we dial that department right in the other store. And that is so crazy now because you've got all, of course, all that at your fingertips, and the stores will manage all that. But anyway, so I digress, but Greg, sorry, but I had forgotten about that completely.
Well, I think it's interesting that we didn't immediately leap to some of those solutions because of the way that e-commerce was constructed originally as essentially a separate business from bricks and mortar retail. And there were a lot of reasons for that, mostly having to do with store operations, budgets, and bonuses, but no good corporate reasons for it. But what it makes me think, JP, is you have seen so many points of view and so many variations and the problem approach from so many different companies. I'm curious, what jumps out at you? If you had a eureka moment or an epiphany during all of this, is there anything that jumps out at you that really kind of drives how you approach things today?
Yeah, I guess the two answers to that question, one of which is people, just because you can envision a process doesn't make it's going to be realistic. In my experiences from SAP, their big approach was keep it all in-house. Everything is SAP. So let's go back to the example like Kara, you had on the delivery of your washer and dryer and the white glove. Imagine how many different systems would have to coordinate across to make that happen. So you're going to have an order management system. You're going to have some inventory control systems. You're going to have warehouse management systems. You're going to have your order management systems, not to mention all the billing and finances and all the downstream processes. But more importantly, it's going to be not just within your organization. It's going to be dealing across multiple trading partners. Right. So you're going to have to touch to that delivery van's trading system? What is their appointment scheduling system? Not, so it's just bringing all the data together from all the different systems. And in many ways, that's the same challenge that we still experience today that we experienced 20 years ago, which is the reason a lot of these things fail is because you can't get interconnectivity and collaboration across multiple enterprises. So
Right.
you're actually enterprise to enterprise. We've done a great job getting things to work within the enterprise and with systems you can control. But when you start dealing with third parties and their third party systems, so I guess my point is being a guy that's on the TMS, my eureka moment is, man, it sucks being on TMS because it's so hard because that's our job. We have to communicate to all these boundary systems and then translate their data, transform it, and turn it into intelligence and act upon it. So it's more than just writing reports. You're actually managing operations in real time, trying to communicate with a warehouse system, with an inventory control, with order management, with vendor systems, with customer systems. So, yeah, we've used terms like control tower and control towers trying to bring us all together, but that's really, that's what we do in TMS is a lot more than just move in freight and execute in freight. It's that, we really are the gatekeeper of the boundary systems between you and your trading partner. So we sit outside the four walls and that's where we have to live.
So I think this is a great segue, Greg, if I have your permission to move forward into learning a lot more about 3G TMS.
Yeah, I think so. Right.
We've got our title, Retail Ruminations and Reminiscing, the three R's. It feels like. Let's bluff it. Let's bottom line up front. Stealing a word that you use, JP. So tell us the bottom line. What does 3G TMS do? And then we're going to find out where you spend your time.
Gotcha. So using, an industry definitions, we're a tier one multimodal holistic transportation management system software. We are a software vendor. We're not a service provider. We're not a third-party logistics. We sell to third-party logistics companies who use our software. We sell to shippers that are looking to manage their own freight. So our normal client is either going to be a shipper or a 3PL. On the shipper side, we sell a lot to shippers where the food is a big one. Where the delivery, the fulfillment of the product is a big component. So you don't just buy the product, you also buy the fulfillment. You see this a lot in food, for example, food and beverage and some process industries where, hey, you just didn't buy those chicken breasts and chicken parts. You've bought the delivery of the product at specific intervals, at specific times in the supply chain. So if I'm that company that's managing that food delivery, I want a good TMS to manage that so that I can execute with my carriers, find the right mode of transit, pay those carriers, manage freight while it's in transit. All right. So that's what a TMS does is it takes orders, it optimizes orders, it figures out what's the best mode, how do I have to get there? And above all, though, it's following all the rules. So it's like, when does it have to be there? What kind of truck does it need? What's the freight class? How do I calculate the rate? There's thousands of constraints. What routing guides do I have to follow?
I can only imagine. But what's really neat as we kind of marry all this together is your background and as co-founder to have the software be built, assuming all those constraints and all the algorithms and all that stuff as us non-technologists don't really get. But to draw on your background from where you did a lot of that in your earliest, for service merchandise through a variety of technology platforms to bake all of that into what 3G TMS does. I mean, that's got to be a huge advantage in the marketplace.
Yeah, it takes, when we formed the company, we went out to pretty much every other TMS that was at the time and hired intellectual property from them. So not just junior people, but senior people from what would be our major competitors. So it's a lot. It's a very complex industry. I like to say transportation is about 8-10% of the GDP in North America. So it's a big industry. So software that's supporting transportation is another huge industry in itself. So you get into some massive complications very quickly, but we're still trying to keep it a high level. But that's kind of what we did is when we founded the companies, go hire a lot of intellectual property from everyone that had done it before, and let's come back together and let's do it again. And each little thing that we do, we can do slightly better. So as a whole, it's massively better. But individually, you might look and say, well, here's a component. Well, yes, you print a bill of lading. Great. Okay, well, who's good? Everyone prints a bill of lading. Yes, you contact the carrier. Yes, everyone contacts the carrier. But you just do things a little more efficiently and a little that it's hard for someone on the outside to really understand. It's almost like, if you're a doctor or a brain surgeon, how do you know if your brain surgeon's good or not? Well, you got to go talk to another brain surgeon, kind of thing.
It's a great analogy.
It's the only way you're going to understand. Is this a good surgeon or not? Well, you got to go talk to the other surgeons. So, it's the same way. So, sorry, I digress.
No, I love that.
No, I think what you just said was TMS is brain surgery. And I think
sometimes it is. Well, we've got like 50 people in our R&D group that's been doing this over 7 years. I mean, it's not something that, sure, you can put together a very high-end, very simple feature TMS, and there's a lot of those out there, and that's right for some people. If all you need to do is find a carrier and print a bill of lading, you're great. All right. But if you want that integrated system that's going to talk to my warehouse management, order management, going to talk to my vendors and partners and channels and carriers and do that electronically and translate data and operate very efficiently, that's a different type of TMS. And what we're trying to work on is really making that available to the masses, though, not just to the super high-end folks, but
gotcha.
That mid-sized company, and that's our target market right now, as we call it SMBs. People that are shipping maybe $10 million of freight a year plus. With our suite. So as opposed to before, TMS is this tier 1, as Gardner calls it, as a tier 1. We're generally available for people that are shipping 100, maybe even 200 million plus is what their freight spend was. But now if you're 10 million, it seems to be about the right number for what we're doing. Then there's the free stuff for stuff below 10 million.
TMS for the people is what I'm hearing.
For the masses. Yes.
For the masses, even better. All right. So before Kara picks your brain a little bit more on transportation, one quick question about your role. Where do you spend your time? You shed a little light on that early on, but where do you spend your time, and what's your favorite part about what you do day in and day out?
Two things. I'm in corporate development now, but I run partners and channels here at 3G TMS. But in the corporate and development, I also do strategic initiatives. And one of the greatest things I get to do is I get to talk to customers. And, I'm working a corporate initiative right now of, we have a network. We have a lot of shipper clients and we have a lot of 3PL clients. I'm working this initiative. Well, let's get them to talk to each other a little bit more. Shippers are always looking for good service providers, and 3PLs are always looking for good shipper clients. So maybe I can form more of a network and get them talking. So, talking to the shipper customers now and finding out what they're looking for, and talking to my 3PL customers and what they're looking for, that's the best part of my day, I think, is talking to the end customers. So I do like talking to partners too, finding out what people are doing. We use like SMC3 is one of my partners for the rating side. They also have a lot of API offerings. We do a lot of our own APIs directly to carriers, but they have some conglomerate offerings, which we might be looking at too. So talking to the partners that's the fun stuff, that's, dealing with that. And that's where I spend most of my days.
Outstanding. All right. So Kara, let's put our finger on the pulse a bit.
Yeah. So JP, you're talking to customers, 3PLs, so shippers, 3PLs, partners. You seem to have a pulse on sort of everything that's going into moving freight, right? Which is super exciting, both from an actual physical perspective as well as the tech and the money, right? And we always talk at lead coverage about, hey, you can move the physical freight, but there's also the tech that touches it, and then how does the money move? What are some of the sort of key trends that you're seeing when you are talking to all these folks that either have really shaped where you're thinking about the company going, 3G TMS going in the future, or just like really interesting stuff that's happened in the last couple of months? Clearly, COVID has been a huge factor in some of that too.
You've heard
We'd
of that.
love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you've heard of COVID too, right? So, it's a very interesting topic. We sell a lot to, like we said, food and beverage clients. We have automotive clients, and then our 3PLs clients sell across the board. So we have CPG in there. We've got retail. We've got a little bit of everything. I mean, obviously, when COVID hit, the non-essential clients, a lot on our automotive sides, they just dropped off the face of the earth. Their orders went to nothing. Our system is all based on transactions, so we can see, because that's how we bill our clients, is per transaction. So our automotive clients, if they were non-essential, they dropped to nothing, versus our food and beverage clients, it just went the exact opposite. It totally spiked up. What we're seeing, and it's something that I've said in the past, is we're seeing a lot of change going on. So, but if you've been in transportation, and I've been around it for a long, change is a very normal process. But put yourself in the day in the life of one of my shippers that is moving freight, and what's happened? Well, capacity's changed. Carriers are changing rapidly. So there used to be a glut of transportation, a lot more carriers available to handle than there was freight. So it was easier to find carriers and you would be able to do it at better rates. Now capacity is tightening. It's tightening substantially. So there's less carriers and you have to be more dynamic in how you actually move freight. So change is the normal was really what we're seeing, but that's what it really hasn't changed. Whether there's always some crisis, that's okay. Some port shuts down, somebody's going to go on strike. Maybe there's a tornado or a hurricane. I mean, change is the normal and disruptions are the normal. And that's what we experience here. Granted, COVID's been maybe a little bit bigger than what we've seen in others, but in the end, you have to deal with things very dynamically. You have to be able to help me identify my best mode. If I don't have trucks, maybe I can put it on intermodal and put some on train. Maybe I can move some of my LTL freight to parcel. Maybe I can move some of my parcel to consolidated and put it in truck and ship it with pool distribution. So those are the types of things that you have to be able to be dynamic. And like I keep saying, change is the normal, but it's like there's always some new crisis going on, right? So
I'm curious, JP, your mid-market is sort of your market, right? So we talked earlier about sort of this 10 million in freight. Are you seeing that that this sort of mid-market shipper maybe wasn't prepared for COVID and is now making investments to be more flexible for the next time something like this happens?
Yeah, no, definitely. It was funny when we started the company, and it was 6-7 years ago. We were all SaaS based, cloud first, and we had people say, "Well, what happens when the internet goes down? I won't be able to use your software. I need an on-prem solution." Now we have some of these same people calling us back saying, "What happens when you can't go into the office to run your on-prem solution?" I mean, the internet is safer than your on-premise. Who would have thought that? I mean, so I mean, the change is going to be whatever you can't think. Now, if you have a very flexible and dynamic system, your system has to be able to be workflow configured by you personally, by your company. You can't go to your vendors and wait for them to program you a change. So if your business flows change, if your workflow changes, you have to be able to do it dynamically yourself. All right. And that's a key part of being self-sufficient. And that's I don't want to be, shouldn't be a commercial for my company, but that's really, when it comes down to it, one of my biggest differentiators I have over some of my other competitors is we put that in the hands of our customers. So if I want to be able to self-tender truckloads, or I want to do a waterfall tender, I could set up a business process that does that. I can set up workflows so that if there's problems with things while they're in transit, the system tries to solve it itself to a certain level. It tries to maybe renegotiate to another carrier, or puts it out to bid, or it finds a solution where it can. And then only when it can't find a solution, then it alerts a user. So exception management is very, very big in this business right now, especially because you want this stuff to be automated, because you have less people working, and you have maybe one route planner that's now managing hundreds, if not thousands, of orders a day, versus before you might have 5 or 6 people doing that. So you're at a point where you have, and then it gets to be so complicated, because not only are you just doing things manually, you're having to integrate with systems. So it has to be a system to system thing. So you got to let the systems do the complex things, and let the humans do what they do best, which is the thought process. How do I make this better overall?
So as we transition, that's a great, outstanding question, a great segue point. But before Greg talks globally, I know he's got a thought or two about cloud-based anything. And Greg, I saw your ears perk straight up. What follow-up comments on what JP just shared come to mind before we go global?
Well, it goes directly to working with small and mid-sized businesses, and that is your solution needs to be more, and forgive this analogy, JP, because it might be a little bit below your level, but your solution needs to be more QuickBooks than SAP. It needs to be configurable and adaptable, but not require customization and a big services effort to adapt it to the uniquenesses of your business. And it sounds like, and that's my question, JP, it sounds like that is more of what you've done. You've got more of that configurability than customization.
And I would say that's the biggest advantage of a very modern system versus an older system, because I don't know, even 10 years ago, when you would design a piece of software, you would design it to perform a function. Now you don't do that. Now when you're designing a piece of software, you design a piece of software that's going to have a default function so that it does its default process out of the box, but it's configurable to be modified for unforeseen circumstances, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. But you got to put that power in the hand of your end user. And that's what we figured out. It's like, so there's actually a duality of software going on right now. I have some very, very complex customers that are asking for very, very complex things. These are my high-end 3PLs, my high-end shippers. If you're looking at the video, I'm using hands here because I got Italian in me. And on the other side, I've got some other clients which are saying, no, I just want it to work and I want it simple and I don't want to think about it. All right. So you got two different types of users, and you can't, some people are making the mistake where they're trying to do it in one. All right, so my user experience is going to be this one screen. No, it doesn't work. You actually need to think about it from two different perspectives. Let me give that super small user that simple screen. Maybe I'm somebody that only logs into the system once or twice a week or a month. I don't want to have to be trained. I want it to just work. I want to be able to just ship a piece of LTL freight, for example. I want to just log in. I'll give you my zip codes, my dimensions, and I want to bill a landing. I just want it to go. I don't want to think about it, all right? Versus on the complex side, I've got this person that's dealing with hundreds, maybe thousands of truckload orders, and I want the max amount of flexibility in my day-to-day functions. But I'm also a user that sits in this screen the majority of their time. So they're a highly trained, highly executed. And so then you can go more, I almost think like this person, give them a calculator, right? This person, you're going to give them Excel. All right. And they're going to teach them pivot tables, and you're going to teach them how to write pie charts, and you're going to teach them how to program and actually write in Excel, versus this person, well, it's calculated. They know how to add 2 + 6 divided by 3. They know how to do that. You don't teach them that. So that's the type of user experience that you need to dive down. And so you got to give that flexibility, but you also got to be simple about it, because that's what everyone wants now. People want to buy a piece of software. Hey, I want it live in 4 weeks. I want it live in 2 weeks. All right. Yeah. But, we've talked about the complexities related to integrating all these different trading partners and across the enterprises. We'll simplify that as best we can on the IT side. But in the end, it's not very simple. It's, we're trying to hide that complexity as absolutely much as we can, but we still got to give you the flexible.
Well, and one of the things I heard you say that I like is you give the answer where the answer can be given by the technology, because that's another thing that the current and incoming generations, the non-outgoing generations of workforce, are really seeking, is they expect technology to deliver the answer where it can, and for the user experience to be very, very simple. So, well, okay. So since we're talking about ethereal stuff like that, so if you think outside of transportation, JP, and maybe some more macro type supply chain issues or challenges or trends that you're seeing or tracking or reading about that are interesting to you, what else is out there that, whether it impacts TMS or even transportation, what else is out there that you see as interesting or forward-looking in supply chain?
The manufacturing trends are one that I'm kind of really interested in seeing what's actually happening. So we're learning that, where should we source and make our products? And that keeps changing on us. For 10 years ago, it was everything's being outsourced to, China or some third world country, and they're outsourcing there now. Now, however, labor costs in China are up. There's political dynamics going on. In the end, the driving factor is going to be what's best. What's the most cost-efficient way to make product? And in many ways, China labor costs are going up. And the other thing is we're automating labor, with labor being so much automated. So in other words, why would I manufacture something in China when I can automate that same process domestically, and then I don't have to worry about sending raw materials there and bringing finished goods back? All right. And I also don't have that time lag. And that's, most people forget about that time lag on their cost of goods. But, you got an extra 60 days of time lag sending products back and forth. So that 60 days is very expensive. So does it make sense, to manufacturing process? So, manufacturing more locally, as we're getting much more, how do I say it? As we're getting significantly better at automating manufacturing processing, reducing the cost of labor to very little because it's an automated process, our manufacturing swing, more than any politician, I think, has done. I think that's the biggest swing why we're seeing more on-source and that's why we saw more outsource in the past. It's, in the end, economics are going to rule here.
That's right.
What makes the most sense from a business perspective. So, that's what I'm seeing. So that's the big trend I'm kind of following more than anything is, how quickly will that actually happen? Hey, can I have a robot build this, or do I need to pay someone to build this?
And talk about a complex dynamic, right? Because it doesn't work for every product, or it may not work for every aspect of a product. You might see some products have sub-assemblies that are automated and final assemblies that are more manual, or vice versa. And
oh God,
one of the things that we've experienced and we've talked about a lot is that saying nearshoring and reshoring is a lot easier than doing nearshoring.
Yeah. Well, then you get in this supply chain disruptions. All right. We just saw this with COVID. There was a big supply chain disruptions, but even post COVID right now, there's things going on where people don't understand. Right now you can't buy a container. Literally, those containers that they ship over, you can't buy one. The orders are booked out to 2022 almost on buying new containers. Steamship line rates have hit the highest. Like a box from container normal is $4,000 now. We're $4,000. That's the standard cost to move a box. We're talking almost half again as much as it was just a few months ago. So you can't buy. Capacities are the swing is just insane that you're going to have on that there too. So yeah. Anyway, extended supply chain is always. What's going to happen? Is that going to drive more manufacturing, more in local locations? Who knows? I mean, it's just like I said, change is the normal, right?
Well, and it's worth keeping an eye on. It is, because it's those dynamics, and they will undoubtedly change. I don't think any of us know exactly how they will change, but those will impact dynamics that will ultimately impact transportation for your business, and labor and automation and other technologies that go into it. Yeah. So I think that's a great driver, and a really interesting one to talk about. We'll have to take that offline, JP, and you and I can just bounce that back and forth for the next 12 years or so.
One other element to all of this reshoring and nearshoring, we referenced the policymakers, the politicians, the business leaders, the business cases for making those decisions, but consumers still, as much as consumers are learning in the recent years about not just supply chain, but more important, what I love is they're learning more about reverse logistics, right? I think we still have a lot more awareness. I think of pharmaceuticals, and we all know the role that China and India plays in that industry. And there's been a lot of talk about bringing a lot of that back to the States, but the price points of the resources and the labor, all those things y'all mentioned are so much different. And I think as consumers, we've got to keep getting more informed about that, because it's not, as we all know, sitting here, it's not one lever. You've got to, when you make those big resourcing decisions, there's what'd you call it? 1,000 different constraints. There's thousands of levers that you've got to make decisions on, and ultimately consumers may pay a lot more for certain things. So
yeah, but like even pharmaceuticals, diving into your example there, 5 years ago, it was significantly much more manual intensive to make pharmaceuticals. Now, you go to these China factories, they're automated factories. They're making this completely automated as much as physically possible. So why have an automated factory in China versus having an automated factory in North America or Canada or Mexico or Europe, for example? So you get into what is the economic benefit, and then you get into the geopolitical considerations, which is, do you want China making pharmaceuticals for your military?
Right.
That's a great question. Well, what if you happen to get a war with China? Okay, call them up and say, I need my first aid kits.
No shortage of ramifications for each of these decisions. But automation, as Greg likes to talk about, automation certainly is in our favor here, a bit of an equalizer here for the U.S. economy and U.S. industry base. So looking forward to how we can leverage that in months and years moving forward. Okay, so Greg, we want to make sure we can connect our listeners with the one and only JP Wiggins, umpire extraordinaire, and a lot more.
So we don't really want people contacting you at your umpire persona, but if somebody does want to reach out to you or to reach out to 3G TMS, how do you suggest they do that?
Obviously the web, right? 3gtms.com. That's how 90% of people find out about you in the day and age. I'm also LinkedIn. You can shoot a message on LinkedIn is the other reason. JP Wiggins. It's pretty easy. That's the easiest way at this point. So JP Wiggins at 3GTMS is my personal email. Feel free. I'm happy to engage. I love talking to folks about this stuff. So it's kind of what I do. I know it's exciting. And then, but you just think of the global dynamics of what's going on around you, and you can understand, butterfly flaps its wings in India and it does change the weather in Toledo. I mean, you can piece this stuff together. That's what we do in logistics. It's just so fun. It's part of, it's like making lives better for everybody though, So
I'll tell you, Greg and Kara, when we launched Supply Chain Now forever ago, it was fueled by very passionate, informed conversations just like this, featuring guests like JP Wiggins. And it reminds me every time we hear passion shooting through the Zoom or whatever platform we're on, is why we do this. So JP, really appreciate you sharing your perspective. And Kara, I want to circle back to you. We'll have to have you as a guest host, co-host a lot more often. If you had to pick one thing, Kara, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah.
And Greg, I might do the same. I love putting you on the spot too. What's the one succinct thing that you heard JP talk about that you're going to take away from this conversation?
Can I give you two? Is that okay?
Sure.
I wrote them down.
Rules all
That's
the time.
what I was doing when I was looking down. So one is the bluff. Love this. Gonna use this. So thank the military and your son for giving me a new acronym in my company for sure. And I think the other one that I'm going to take away is just that transportation is always in a state of disruption. Funny story from my background. Like I mentioned earlier, I was early at Echo Global Logistics, and we wrote the first copy that was technology-enabled 3PL. And I remember it was like, 3 or 4 years later, and someone said to me, well, we're the first tech-enabled 3PL. And I was like, false. Doug Wagner and I wrote that copy in 2006. So you can't have that. That's mine. And so I think you're so right? I mean, even the Echoes and the Coyotes and the sort of just like the disruptive technologies that you've been working on the TMS side for a really long time, you are literally disrupting yourself, JP. Like the work that you did at SAP, or that essentially became SAP, you're now disrupting the 3G. I just think that's super cool. Like, I think it's really neat that we as logistics professionals continue to disrupt our own work as we continue to sort of grow as an industry. So thanks for bringing that to the table today.
Constantly challenge yourself, right?
Yeah. Love that. All right, Kara, you're going to get the next close call that JP has to make, by the way. You've made your case. All right. So Greg, what's the one big thing on your end before we sign off here?
I think it is the value of experience, and the recognition that you need to be always learning, right? Because you can avoid so many. We talked about it with service merchandise and with some of the other application companies that JP worked at. You can learn so much from your experience, but you have to continually seek to improve on that, not lean on that, but use that as a lever to help continue to lift up your learning throughout your career. And clearly, JP, you've done that. And that is incredibly valuable, especially as we're in this time of generational transition in the workplace, in the world, frankly, but in the workplace especially. I think it's important to value experience and to recognize people that can utilize that experience, not as a crutch, but as a lever to help create innovation and create disruption in the marketplace, and to accelerate that advancement of technologies and solutions.
Well said. Good stuff. All right. As much as we hate to do it, we're going to wrap up this episode of Supply Chain Now. Great conversation here. We've been featuring JP Wiggins, co-founder and corporate development at a company on the move, 3G TMS. JP, look forward to having you back again. It was well worth it today.
Thank you again.
You bet. And Kara Smith-Brown, Greg White, great stuff today. What a great episode. Enjoyed diving in. Appreciate y'all's questions. It takes a nuanced approach to get all the goodness out of guests like this, right?
Not really with JP. I feel like we could just turn the mic on and just let him run. But sometimes, actually, I'm glad that it is, JP, you're very good about sharing what you know, and you know a ton, obviously, and letting us get into some of those nuances, like the service merchandise discussion and some of these others. I think that those are great recognitions for our community.
Thanks.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So one final question before I wrap up. Kara, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you and the lead coverage team.
Sure, leadcoverage.com, and I'm Kara Brown, or say Kara, just Kara at leadcoverage.com. You can also reach out to Will, who's often a very, usually a host with y'all too. So Will at leadcoverage.com.
That's right. All right. So with all that said, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. Thoroughly entertaining and enjoying. I've got 18 pages of notes on my end too, Kara. Greg, good stuff. Great to have you back after your sailing adventures back in the seat here at Supply Chain Now. We got a busy week ahead. To our listeners, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, check us out wherever you get your podcasts from, or you can visit us at supplychainnowradio.com. On behalf of our entire team, hey, be like JP, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. And with that said, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, guys.